What does racism look like right now? Like, I mean, we know what it looked like back in the day. We know, what our experiences have been. But right now, today, what does racism look like out here?
It's sad to say, but it still sort of looks the same as it did in the 60s, to be honest with you. When I walk down the street and, a white lady, puts up the cross and tells me to burn in hell, I think of, what my parents went through growing up, and especially recently, We used to think racism, was underneath, it was more systemic, and it's that too, but it's out front too, it's in your face too, every single day. And so I would love to say that, it's more systemic and we can't touch it, but, there are examples of racism that you see and feel every single day, And it's sad to think that, when you talk about Dr. Martin Luther King and his I Have a Dream speech, I feel like we're at a point now where we're actually regressing, We were making so much progress, and I think we're regressing now, and it pains me to say that. And so when you say, what does racism look like? Just turn on your TV, man. You see it every single day. You see it.
I'd like to add on to that, not just even the TV, now that everyone has their phones and they're recording everything. It's like now it's even more, politically, whatever you want to go for, but this last administration, in a sense, people felt more comfortable to be open about it. And so, yeah, you might have felt before like it's a little bit underneath, it's a little bit, they're hiding it. Now people are like more upfront about it. So, and again, adding the video cameras all over the place, it does seem like it's in your face.
So we are all accomplished individuals who have seen the world and done a lot of things here. But, with that being the case, like along our careers, maybe we can go one by one and talk about how have you experienced racism or social injustice in your professional life?
From being called the N-word to passive aggressive, where it's implied and not said. And luckily and unluckily, I come from an environment where I know how to read that. Because sometimes you don't get that education where you don't read that. And that could lead you to saying something that you might get fired. So you got to figure out a way to, how do I navigate this? I've experienced it on all levels, from blatant to passive aggressive. It's been everything. And that goes from being a player to being a trainer to being a broadcaster. Every spectrum across the board.
I think about early in my broadcast career working a football game in Iowa City. And I was with Brent Musburger, Dick Vermeil, and I was a sideline reporter. And the three of us were walking into the coaches' offices in the stadium. Those two guys walk in, security guy, policeman stops me. "What are you doing here?" And I was dressed just like they were in, sport coat and business attire. And I said, "I'm with the crew, I'm a sideline reporter." He goes, "Oh, are you with them?" I said, "Yeah." So that sometimes it's subtle like that. Sometimes racism in my career has looked like, back in 1990, I'm doing a college football game, and I said, there's a Texas A&M football game. Greg Hill scores a touchdown. Hill takes it to the house. Monday morning production meeting. All the kind of suits, the important guys are in there saying, "What the heck is Mark Jones talking about in the house?" This is 1990 now, so keep the context there. What is he talking about? Nobody knows what that SHIT is. What is he talking? And thank goodness there was one black producer in the room that said, "Hey, now listen. This is broadcasting. We're supposed to be speaking to a broad audience. Mark Jones speaks to a certain audience that maybe you don't know, but there's a lot of people out there that get what he says. That's at one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum of racism, what it looks like for me in my career professionally dealing, I had a football producer say to me, Mark, why do you use big words? Don't use big words. Why do you use big words? And I said to him, would you tell Bob Lee not to use big words? Would you tell Tom Rinaldi not to use big words? My dad knew Latin. He used to speak Latin to us at the table. If my brother and I dared ask what a word meant, he would tell us the Latin root of the word, explain it to us, and oh, Dad, stop, please. Had enough. And my grandfather was an English professor. So every time we visited my grandpa, he would drill us on vocabulary. I couldn't get away from it. But him looking at me, asking me why I use big words, why wouldn't I? That's what it looks like.
I can have all these experiences, same as you guys. I just remember a lot of times as a player, I did a bunch of like speaking engagements or panels like this, or anytime they wanted someone to speak, they would ask me, and I don't know how many times, God, you're just so articulate.
Right.
I'm like,
You speak so well, right?
you speak so well. And I'm like, I did go to Duke, but I'm just not. But I want to go on another layer of being a woman. I want you to understand that everything that you felt as being a person of color, whether you see it on TV, whether it's subtle, whether it's blatant, whether it's in your face or just said around you, times that by 2 being a woman, and times that by black men actually saying it.
Right.
So understand that most of my struggle, more so, might have been more being a woman. Being in a sense where I can be in a group doing work and the questions asked, and they go here, 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 here. Then finally to me, I give them the answer. Oh, we're gonna use it. Next question, they do the same thing. So finally you're like, hey, how about you look over here first?
I'm over here, yeah.
And the thing is, what you realize is sometimes it's so in their subconscious they don't realize it. So what I've learned with a lot of my time, and granted, like I'm the only woman in what I do every single day in a quote boys club, locker room, whatever. Intention is everything for me, because I've learned that if I know someone's intention, that's a teaching moment. Because the moment I may hear something in the area, something may be said, this and that, you take a moment to teach, and 9 times out of 10, a lot of these men are like, oh my God, like that was not even great, and you learn. And then there's some that you're just like, to hell with you, then you're done. But I've learned a lot of patience over the years of being a person of color and then a woman. And I see it in my face. Like I see, and this is an example that is more recent. Someone was talking about, just a woman, Becky Hammond. Oh, she could be a head coach, talking about that. And all on social media. I don't usually do social media because I get real mad really quick. So I was like, well, let me just look at these comments, and a lot of them are great. And then all of a sudden, they were just, some are awful. Oh, she shouldn't coach men. She should be in the kitchen. All this ignorant stuff. And you click on their page, and they're like, Black Lives Matter, equality. And you're like, for who?
Right.
For who?
Yeah.
So I stand to say in front of everyone who, Black History Month, we always talk about equality. We always talk about a lot of things, like even within our race, with everything that we've got going on, we need equality for everybody. And that's, and so that's kind of another layer on with my experience, and still, with race daily, with being a woman, like daily.
I remember coming up in the business. I'm fresh out of college, 2 or 3 years. I'm ready to take on the world. I'm dreaming of being Mark Jones. I'm dreaming of being Stuart Scott, legends in the game. And I had an agent at this time, and I was working in Yakima, Washington. You know where that is, good old-fashioned Yakima, Washington. Exactly. And I had this agent, and we were going over some of my work, and he's like, Kyle, I don't know, man. I just think you're too black, man.
Oh.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
And
Tell
so,
me what that means.
Yeah,
Please.
You know what though, Lindsey? I didn't even give him that opportunity. I fired him. I said, you're not, I can't have you representing me. And so I know we're going to talk about this and supporting black businesses and supporting each other. And that's why we need that, right? That's why, because, you know, for something like that to happen, that could have deterred my career. That could have, you know, instead it motivated me, fortunately. But there are things like that happening every single day in our country. And, you know, I just want the people that watch this, we deal with it too, you know, we feel the pain, you know, and, you know, we came from the same spots as other people, and we still feel it.
You know, with that, you know, kind of flowing in line, you know, a lot of the issues that happen amongst blacks or with African Americans is with our criminal justice system or with police. And, you know, I have to give a shout out to Chief Daniel Hahn. He's always been a person that I could talk to about these topics, and he has a clear view on how to change this type of behavior and thought process. But with that being the case, I had a conversation with my son who, you know, probably like most of us, we've given our children an opportunity to grow up a little different than we had to, because we've worked hard and we've put ourselves in position. And my son had never experienced racism, or at least he thought he hadn't, until this year. Now he's 6'4", he's got a beard, he's starting to look, you know, more like me, God bless his soul. And he got pulled over for going 5 over in an area near his house. And the police officer's first question was, "What are you doing here?" At that point, I think he understood, and our conversations have changed. With you all, when was the moment, or when was, because we've all had them, when was that moment for you where you realized, dealing with law enforcement or dealing with the criminal justice system, that things were different?
For me, it happened when I was really young, to be honest with you, man, because I really didn't like the police when I was a kid. And Seattle, as you guys can see for some of the videos, even today, it's been real bad up there. And they actually put a program in place where, because they knew we liked sports, Sonics were big, Jack Sigma, Gus Williams, Dennis Johnson. So for us to get a card, they had it in the police's pocket. You had to go up and initiate conversation with the police to get that card, which was awkward and difficult in a lot of ways. But I'm gonna give you a more recent one, because for me, it's like, I can't even remember the first time. It's just always kind of been that way. But it was right here in Sacramento, and I was trying to have this conversation with my son. I think I told you, you and I talked about this. I'm trying to explain to him, because he grew up different. He grew up way different. Yeah. I'm inner city, he is not that. Right. So I was trying to tell him about, you know, the things that happen with police. And right here on the 80, where 80 goes into 5, we got pulled over. They were doing construction. Dude got behind us, and he had been behind us for a while, and I saw him, because that's just kind of how it is. It's that nervous feeling. I pull over on the freeway, and he comes up on the side. I roll all the windows down, sunroof, the whole deal. And I'm talking to my son while I'm doing that, and explaining to him that this is how you do. Put your hands on the dashboard. I got my hands on the steering wheel. He comes up to the back of the car, and he trips immediately, starts yelling, hits his gun, and my son, he's like getting ready to freak out. And I'm like, dude, that's the wrong thing to do right now. So I'm walking him through it. And finally, I give dude my stuff. Takes him about 5 seconds, and he comes back, and it's a whole different deal. How you doing, Mr. Christie? Good to see you. I'm glad, blah, blah, blah. So that is, for my son, like your son, that was his first time. We had talked about it. We had went through it. He had been, but not until it happens. And for me, I just kind of grew up in it, so it was kind of different.
Yeah. My son was, a story like that. My son was, you know, they grew up different than I did, you know. And he was on campus at his first university in South Carolina, his first college, and police pulled him over for no reason, didn't give him a ticket, harassed him, ultimately let him go, and 2 weeks later I pulled him out of school there. I don't have it with when it comes to law enforcement and my kids. My kids, you know, marched with my wife and I at a lot of the Black Lives Matter marches in Miami this past summer. And they are very fiercely proud black women, and my son, black man. But, you know, they've gotten close-up images of what the law enforcement quotient of racism looks like. They stood outside my home, our home in Miami, when a policeman pulled me over in my own driveway, had his hand on his gun, and asked me, whose car is this? And the other one, what are you doing here? I said, officer, this is where I live. And I had a talk with my kids, especially my son. Same thing, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock on the wheel. Tell the officer you're reaching for your license and registration in the glove compartment where I've told you to keep it. And they follow the rules, but they're very aware of the tiered justice system. And I like I am, because I relate my stories to them. I've been pulled over in the last 3 years, probably 4 times, in my own neighborhood in South Florida. In my own neighborhood. And, I have friends in law enforcement, and they're some of the ones to tell me that we got problems in the police force. There's a lot of racism.
I just remember one time I was playing in the WNBA. This wasn't my first time, but this just stuck out in my head. I was playing, got pulled over. He said I didn't stop all the way at a stop sign. He asked something, and I said, everything you need to know. Here's my insurance, here's my this, everything you need to know. He told me I had to get out of the car, and then he made me sit on the curb, and I was there for like 45 minutes and just sitting there. He didn't do anything. He was just had an attitude, sitting there. A teammate drove by. You okay, you okay? Just keep driving. Everyone just keeps stopping by. I'm still sitting here, it's like an hour. I remember, it was like an hour. Our coach comes. She's driving, white woman. She was saying stuff to the police I wouldn't even dream of saying, and was going off. And he comes to me, and she's like, she plays, you're in the WNBA? I go, yeah. He goes, well, why didn't you tell me? I was like, well, and I didn't tell him on purpose. Yeah. I just kind of waited, so that situation, but you talk about the first time, I knew about it because before Texas, I lived in Alabama, and my parents were like, police, just leave it alone. But I already felt like I've experienced it and knew it, but I went to this little junior high football game with my friend from Ohio. She's a strawberry blonde, doesn't know anything about like racism where she's from, like just only, we're sitting here. There was this young black boy, he had a Malcolm X shirt on, big X Malcolm X shirt. And she saw the whole thing. This white officer goes up to him, and basically you see this kid taking the shirt off. So the police officer, she's like, what happened? He said, you need to take the shirt off. It's inappropriate. You can't wear that shirt. And I was just like, whatever. 2 seconds later, she sees this Caucasian boy with a shirt on that says, you wear your X, I'll wear mine. And it was a Confederate flag. And the X was like against Malcolm X, right? Anyway, so she's going to the police, and she's like freaking out saying, you made him change, whatever. And he's like, there's no law in like wearing flags. And it was crazy because I saw that, and it was just like, ugh, but her reaction to that, and she'd never she never knew it was like that. And I just will always remember that, where it was just kind of one side and the other. And she's like, yeah, you protect your own, but you don't do this and that. And I'm like, you got to pick your battles when it comes to this. So,
I'll just add in, because I'm listening to these stories, and I think back, as a 14-year-old, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this. A couple, you're just walking down the street, a couple grip you up. You look like this, you look like a suspect. You look like somebody we're looking for. And that happened to me and my friend. But Galen, I want people at home to understand that the fact that we have to have these conversations with our kids in America, man. I got an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old at home, and they're so innocent. And you don't want to ruin that innocence, man. You want them to be positive and think everybody's good. But the fact that we have to have these conversations in our homes each and every night and tell our kids how to react to the people who are there supposedly to protect you, it's sad, man. You don't have to worry about me, but think about having to have that conversation with your kids, and I think there's a segment of our population, they don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, It really is sad, and it's painful. And the first time I had that conversation with my kids actually was this past summer, because you can't ignore it, everything that's going on. And, my wife and I, we really had to sit down explain to him, all right, this is what's going on in the world. And I remember driving home about a year ago, got off work late, midnight. I live in a small town out in Massachusetts, and I get pulled over by the cops. The first thing I did was call my wife on the phone because I needed to make sure I had a witness or somebody. If something happened, I wasn't just going to be killed on this road by myself without anybody knowing. So I told my wife, honey, stay on the line, stay on the phone, and listen in. And we shouldn't have to think like that, though. You know, and this is America, right? Yeah. Suppose we should not have to think like that. And I think that's the biggest tragedy, that we have to, you know, raise our kids to question police, question authority. And it's not like we want them to be combative. We just want them to be prepared, you know, and it's sad. Yeah.
I have a shortcut. I have a shortcut on my iPhone for when I get pulled over. I hit a button, video starts, it calls my wife, because I've seen what happened during the last 4 years in this country in particular, and it's sad.
Galen, the fact that each and every one of us know the unwritten rules about getting pulled over, and every time a cop passes, I look in my rearview mirror to this day, and I own my vehicle, and I own my house, and every one of us knows that hair standing up. Just by that, that should tell you. Like, I didn't know that he put his hands on. I didn't know that. You and I have talked about it. This is like, it ain't no gray room here.
Right. I don't know anybody
that
who's
don't,
black who has to have
that
the experience.
Hey,
Exactly.
That's my point. Is like, that in and of itself is speaking to what
Right.
everybody is saying. Is like, listen to what we're saying. This is something that it doesn't go on with me. I've made millions of dollars. These guys have made millions of dollars. Well, the point is, it doesn't matter.
Right. You know, it's crazy because it sends me back to a conversation I had a few years ago with a neighbor across the street, Caucasian woman who has obviously grown up, you know, systemically learning things, much like all of us. And it's not just on the black community that this miseducation, it's perpetuated because they continue to foster and share that narrative with whites. And so that they don't ever grow and understand and learn, you know, what's really going on with us. So the conversation with this woman is, you know, hey, I'm so pissed off. I just got home, been pulled over. You know, they went through my car. They don't do that. She says to me, they don't do that. Galen, you're a doctor.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
And I looked
Doesn't
at her
even
and I said, you don't get it, do you?
Yeah.
You don't get it.
Yeah.
And you don't
And there are times
until it happens to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, like when I'm on air trying to talk about this, and even with us here, you know, you try and be factual about things. Blacks are 3 times more likely per capita to be shot or dealt with by deadly lethal force than white folks in this country. That's just a fact. And that doesn't, when you go through the numbers, that doesn't include that it's 3 to 1, that a lot of the police precincts and municipalities across the country don't even include black folks that die in police custody. So if you get 3 to 1 that are reported, you can only imagine sometimes perhaps what the actual numbers are.